The afternoon sunlight gilded the red-tiled roofs and spread honey over the dirt roads of Hadougou, painting a serene picture in the capital, Ouagadougou. In a modest meeting room at the presidential palace, Captain IBRAHIM Traoré, Burkina Faso's young leader, had just concluded a tense discussion about the complex security situation in the northern military zone. The weight of the nation's fate was etched deeply in his eyes. Suddenly, his aide-de-camp entered, his face taut with urgency. "Sir, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio wishes to speak with you via video." Traore gave a wry smile. Another concerned call from Washington, but this time from the highest level. He knew this was no courtesy call, it was the start of a battle of wits. He nodded, signaling everyone to leave, wanting to face this pressure alone. As the door closed, Traore approached the desk, the computer screen flickering. Marco Rubio's powerful face appeared clearly, backed by a luxurious Washington, D.C. office, in stark contrast to Traore's unassuming room. In that moment, the divide between two worlds, two philosophies, was unmistakable. "Good afternoon, President Traore," Rubio began, his tone smooth, polite, to the point of being almost emotionless. "Thank you for agreeing to this urgent call. The situation in Burkina Faso is a top concern for Washington." Traore nodded slightly, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Secretary Rubio, I'm ready to listen. Burkina Faso always welcomes frank dialogue." Rubio, with a stern expression, got straight to the point. "We are closely monitoring recent developments in your country, particularly after the changes in leadership. This political instability, Mr. President, poses significant risks to the security and stability of the entire Sahel region. It creates opportunities for terrorist groups like JNIM to expand their operations, threatening not only Burkina Faso, but also neighboring countries and indeed global interests." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The United States is committed to combating global terrorism. We believe a stable, democratic and prosperous Burkina Faso is critical to this shared effort. That is why we urge a clear and swift roadmap to restore democratic constitutional order. History has shown that military transitions often lead to prolonged instability, not lasting stability." Rubio continued, his tone advisory yet tinged with imposition. "We are prepared to provide substantial military, intelligence, and economic development assistance to help Burkina Faso address these pressing challenges. We have the experience and resources. For instance, we've seen remarkable recoveries in emerging democracies when they receive the right support and adhere to good governance principles. However, any assistance must be tied to a genuine commitment to a clear and verifiable democratic transition roadmap, a transparent election timeline, and respect for the human rights of all Burkinabe citizens." Throughout Rubio's lengthy statement, Traore listened calmly, his eyes never leaving the screen. He didn't interrupt or show clear emotion. Yet in his mind, Rubio's words echoed not as an offer of help, but as an indictment, an implicit demand, and a warning. Democracy, stability, aid, human rights. These beautiful words, through Traore's lens, were all too familiar, too often used to mask ulterior motives. When Rubio finished, a brief silence hung in the air. Traore took a deep breath, his voice steady but laced with a sharp edge. "Secretary Rubio," he began, "I understand the concerns you've outlined, but let me share a reality that may be hard to see clearly from Washington, D.C. For years, despite the presence and aid of foreign forces, despite promises of stability and democracy, the security situation in Burkina Faso has only worsened." Traore paused, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. "Thousands of innocent lives have been lost to terrorist groups. Millions of our people have been displaced, living under the open sky. Brutal attacks continue, threatening the very survival of our nation. So where was this help you speak of when our people were living in fear, hunger, and despair? His voice grew firmer. You speak of what history has proven. But our history, Burkina Faso's history, and Africa's broader history has proven something else, that aid and support from the West often come with unspoken conditions, invisible costs, the cost of sovereignty, the cost of our ability to determine our own destiny. We are tired of trading independence for empty promises and inescapable dependency. Rubio's eyes narrowed, clearly irritated by Traoré's bluntness. He was accustomed to African leaders listening and accepting US terms, or at least showing polite reluctance. But Traoré was differente, was confronting him head-on. We are not blind to the threat of terrorism, Secretary, Traoré continued, his voice growing stronger. We face it every day. We are taking decisive actions to protect our people, actions that should have been taken long ago, but we will do it our way, with our own strength and with partners who truly respect us. In that moment, across the video screen, their eyes locked. Rubio's calculating gaze met Traoré's resolute, fiery stare. The tension in the air was almost palpable. The fuse for a larger diplomatic confrontation had been lit. When the call ended, the screen went dark, but the tension lingered tangibly in Traoré's room. He stepped away from the desk, approaching a large map of Burkina Faso on the wall, his eyes scanning each province, each security hotspot. Rubio's words echoed in his ears, polite but brimming with arrogance and imposition. Traoré knew this wasn't a dialogue between equals. It was an attack, a cleverly veiled threat, an attempt to maintain the West's outdated dominance. He immediately convened an urgent meeting with his closest security and diplomatic advisors. The atmosphere in the meeting room was thick with anxiety. Seasoned soldiers and veteran diplomats all felt the weight of the moment. One of them, Colonel Salif Ouedraogo, a close friend and longtime comrade of Traoré, spoke with a grave expression. Mr. President, Secretary Rubio isn't just concerned, he's applying pressure. This may only be the beginning. Traoré nodded, placing his hand on a point on the map where terrorist attacks frequently occurred. You're right, Colonel. This isn't concern, it's another attempt to pull Burkina Faso back into their orbit under the guise of stability and democracy. They want us to be pawns in their geopolitical chess game, not masters of our own destiny. He turned to his advisors, his voice resolute. They couldn't solve the terrorism problem when they were here. They watched thousands of our people die, but their interests always came first. Now when we choose to stand on our own, protect ourselves, and seek partners who respect our sovereignty, they speak up. The foreign minister, a sharp and composed woman, confirmed Traoré's suspicions. Mr. President, our intelligence reports indicate a troubling trend. In recent weeks, U.S. diplomatic delegations have repeatedly visited our neighboring countries, holding secret meetings with regional leaders. The language they use in those meetings mirrors what Secretary Rubio just told you. This is clearly a coordinated campaign to isolate us and pressure us from all sides. Another advisor voiced concerns about economic forecasts. Mr. President, there are already troubling signs in the market. Some major Western investors have reconsidered mining projects, and international financial institutions seem to be delaying disbursements we urgently need. Traoré listened, his gaze unwavering. He had anticipated this. Let them do what they want. We will not waver. We have our own roadmap, one for the people of Burkina Faso. I made it clear to Secretary Rubio that our sovereignty is not up for negotiation. As Traoré predicted, the storm soon became evident. Major international media outlets, often aligned with Western views, began publishing articles harshly criticizing Burkina Faso's military government. Headlines like Burkina Faso under the shadow of a new dictatorship, threat to regional democracy, or Traore, the military leader isolating a nation, proliferated. Western think tank experts appeared on television, loudly warning of human rights erosion and regional instability caused by Traore's regime. Beyond international media, Western-funded NGOs ramped up their activities within the country. They held small workshops in communities, distributed flyers, and used social media to spread negative information about the government. Their messages frequently accused Traore's administration of being authoritarian, suppressing democracy, and ignoring the people's suffering. The clear goal was to incite public discontent, creating an internal wave of opposition to weaken the fledgling government. Simultaneously, economic pressures emerged. A major European conglomerate's mining investment project was inexplicably stalled. Loans from the World Bank and IMF, under negotiation, were suddenly under review and indefinitely delayed. Burkina Faso's currency showed signs of devaluation, sparking initial public concern. Yet, Traore and his advisors were prepared. They were not surprised. In those tense hours, Traore's belief in his chosen path grew even stronger. He understood that these storms were the price of true independence, the cost of self-determination. He refused to let himself or his administration falter. For Traore, this was not just a political battle but a spiritual one here. Fight to assert Burkina Faso's dignity and sovereignty before the world. Days after the first critical Reuters article, an email from the U.S. Embassy arrived, polite but urgent. Ambassador Joanne M. Lockard requested an emergency meeting with President Traore. It was a predictable escalation, a new layer of pressure. TRA, $, knew that after Rubio's words, the ambassador would deliver Washington's formal demands. In his familiar office, Traore welcomed Ambassador Lockard in the afternoon, as the Sahel heat softened slightly but remained oppressive. Lockard, a professional woman with sharp eyes, couldn't hide her discomfort in the African heat, despite the air conditioning running at full blast. She offered a practiced diplomatic smile, but her eyes betrayed seriousness. "Good afternoon, President Traore," Ambassador Lockard began, her voice calm and professional. "Thank you for your valuable time. I'm here to convey my government's deep concerns about the situation in Burkina Faso, particularly its impact on regional stability and the fight against terrorism." Traore sat upright in his armchair, his steady gaze locked on the ambassador. "Welcome, Madam Ambassador. Burkina Faso is always ready to discuss regional security and stability, as we are the ones most directly affected." Lockard placed a leather briefcase on the table, opened it, and pulled out a thin stack of documents. "The U.S. government wishes to see Burkina Faso return to a legitimately elected civilian government soon. This is the foundation for long-term stability and essential for us to continue providing comprehensive support." She took a deep breath, her tone shifting to directness, shedding the initial politeness. "To that end, we propose that your government establish a clear and detailed roadmap for holding presidential and parliamentary elections within no more than 12 months. This would include forming an independent electoral commission, a transparent legal framework, and allowing international observers full access to monitor the entire process." Traore listened, his expression unchanged. He had heard these demands countless times from various sources. This was the West's familiar script for controlling a nation. "On security, we note that your military forces are struggling to contain terrorist groups," Lockard continued, her tone laced with feigned sympathy. "The U.S. is ready to enhance military support, including training, equipment, and advanced intelligence sharing. However, for effectiveness and transparency, we request access to key military operational areas and possibly the establishment of small intelligence coordination centers at some of your strategic bases. Traoré's lips curled into a slight, sardonic smile. Access to military operational areas, intelligence coordination centers. Madam Ambassador, do you call that support or control? Lockhart flinched at the direct question but tried to stay composed. It's cooperation, President Traore. It ensures our resources are used effectively to combat our common enemy. Our common enemy? Traore raised an eyebrow. Our common enemy is the terrorism ravaging this country, Madam Ambassador, but it seems your common enemy might be any nation daring to pursue an independent path, refusing to bow to imposed demands. Traore stood, walking to the wall-mounted map and pointing to areas heavily hit by terrorism. You speak of enhanced military support? For years, foreign forces have been in the Sahel with advanced weapons and technology. So why, Madam Ambassador, does terrorism still run rampant? Why are thousands of our people still dying? Perhaps your support isn't aimed at eradicating the problem, but at maintaining a controllable state of instability, giving you a reason to stay and impose. His voice grew sharper. And on resources. We know the U.S. is concerned about our gold mines, our uranium reserves. We know Western companies are eager to access these resources. I suspect the economic support you mention comes with preferential terms, contracts that leave Burkina Faso with mere scraps while our national wealth is drained. Lockhart paled, unprepared for Traoré's bluntness. President Traore, your accusations are baseless. We only want to see Burkina Faso stable and developed according to international standards. International standards, Madam Ambassador? Traore interrupted, his voice low but commanding. Standards set by the same powers that plundered Africa for centuries. Standards that allowed Western-backed dictators to oppress their own people as long as they served your interests. Our democracy will be built by our people based on our realities, not on cookie-cutter templates imposed from Washington. Traore turned, locking eyes with Lockhart. Madam Ambassador, convey this clear message to your government. Burkina Faso's sovereignty is not for sale. We will determine our own transition roadmap based on our people's needs and our country's realities, not on any schedule set by Washington or any other capital. We will fight terrorism with all our strength, and we will partner with any nation that truly respects us and offers unconditional help. He stepped to the desk, placing both hands on it, leaning slightly toward Lockhart. Your aid always comes with a price, Madam Ambassador, and that price is too high for us. Burkina Faso is tired of trading independence for empty promises and inescapable dependency. Our resources will serve our people, not foreign interests. Lockhart stood, her face betraying shock and frustration. She struggled to maintain professionalism. If you choose this path, Mr. President, you must understand that Burkina Faso risks severe isolation. All support will be suspended. You're putting your country in a perilous position. Traore smiled coldly. We've lived in peril for a long time, Madam Ambassador. But now, at least, we face it standing tall. Convey that message. This meeting is over. He nodded, a polite yet authoritative gesture, inviting the ambassador to leave. Lockhart closed her briefcase, gave a reluctant nod, and walked out, her figure disappearing behind the closed door. In the now silent room with only Traore remaining, the quiet was powerful, a harbinger of a greater storm on the horizon. 3 days after the tense meeting with Ambassador Joanne M. Lockhart, a new email from the U.S. Secretary of State's office appeared in Traore's inbox. This time, Marco Rubio personally requested an urgent video call. Clearly, Traore's blunt rejection and unshaken resolve in the face of warnings had forced Washington to rethink its strategy. This was no easily subdued African leader. Traore decided to take the call, but this time he chose a different setting. He ordered the video link set up in a field military command room where the rustle of maps, the crackle of radios, and the movement of soldiers were constant. Outside the window, a heavy tropical downpour began, the rain hammering the metal roof with a fierce sound, drowning out even the howling wind. It wasn't mere coincidence. Traore wanted Rubio to see the reality he lived and fought in, a battle for survival amid gunfire and harsh nature. The screen flickered on, and Marco Rubio's face appeared again, but this time his expression was slightly different. Gone was the absolute confidence or cold arrogance of before. There was a hint of caution, even reluctance. Perhaps Lockhard's reports had made him reassess. "Good evening, President Traore," Rubio began, his tone softer, less imposing than before. "Thank you for agreeing to this call. I want to express our desire to find common ground. Clearly, misunderstandings have arisen, and I believe we need a more constructive dialogue based on mutual trust to address our shared challenges, particularly the threat of terrorism." Rubio tried a different tactic. He spoke of shared values of freedom and prosperity, of the tradition of cooperation between the US and African nations. "We only want to help, Mr. President. We want to see Burkina Faso stable and prosperous. We believe that through genuine cooperation, we can achieve that goal without unnecessary tensions." He seemed to seek a path to reconciliation, a way for Washington to reassert influence under a gentler guise. He might have even hinted at revisiting some conditions if Traore showed goodwill. Traore listened, his head slightly tilted, his piercing gaze fixed on the screen. The rain pounding the metal roof behind him grew louder, creating a wild symphony for the exchange. He didn't rush to respond. He let Rubio speak, let him lay out his conciliatory platitudes. In Traore's mind, these were merely a new tactic, a more sophisticated trap. When Rubio paused, awaiting a reaction, Traore took a deep breath. His voice rang out, calm but heavy with undeniable truth, overpowering even the rain. "Secretary Rubio," he began, "I respect your position, and I appreciate your desire to find common ground. But let me be frank. Burkina Faso will never return to Western patronage, no matter how you frame it." Traore's eyes grew sharper. "You speak of shared values and trust. Look at our history. For decades you supported dictators in Africa as long as they served your economic and geopolitical interests. Your companies exploited our resources under the guise of investment. You watched our people be oppressed and plundered, yet remained silent. Your sudden concern for our democracy and stability conveniently coincides with our decision to diversify our international relations, to stand on our own feet." Rubio frowned, clearly displeased as Traore cut in and attacked directly. He tried to interrupt. "President Traore, those are unfair accusations." "Unfair?" Traore raised his voice slightly, the rain seeming to blend with his words. "Secretary, when thousands of my people were slaughtered by terrorists and foreign armies on our soil couldn't or wouldn't stop it, was that fair? When our resources were drained to enrich foreign corporations while our people lived in poverty, was that fair? We are tired of lofty words and treacherous actions." Traore gave Rubio no chance to rebut. "Burkina Faso is a sovereign nation. We have the right to choose our international partners. We will work with any country that respects our sovereignty and is willing to help us build a secure, prosperous future without political conditions or hidden control. We don't need a distant guardian. We need true partners who see us as an equal nation, not a colony or a pawn in your political chess game." Rubio's face darkened. He realized his softer words had no effect on Traore. He reverted to a harder tone laced with threat. "If you persist with this confrontational path, Mr. President, I must warn you of severe consequences. Burkina Faso will face deeper international isolation, lose critical support, and that will only weaken your ability to fight terrorism. Traore stared directly at the screen, his gaze unwavering. The rain outside played like a chorus to his final declaration. Secretary Rubio, we've lived in isolation and under pressure for decades. We've lived in peril as your empty promises turned to dust. But now, at least, we face reality with our own resolve. Burkina Faso isn't against the West, we're against interference. We will write our own story. Whatever the cost, this call has gone on long enough. Traore didn't wait for a reply. He signaled his aide, and the screen went dark. In the command room, the rain continued its steady rhythm on the metal roof. But Traore, standing tall in that space, felt an odd serenity. He knew he had closed an old door of dependency, preparing to open a new chapter for Burkina Faso. After the direct confrontation with Secretary Rubio, in the field command room still thick with the smell of rain and damp earth, Traore knew there could be no more delays. He had shown Washington his resolve, but that wasn't enough. It was time to send a clear message, just to external powers, but to his own people and all of Africa. Burkina Faso would never be a pawn in anyone's geopolitical game. This wasn't just a political decision, it was a spiritual rallying cry, an ironclad vow. He summoned his strategic and communications advisors. The atmosphere was no longer one of anxiety, but of intense determination. We won't just defend, Traore declared, his voice resolute in the room. We will act. We will proclaim to the world that our sovereignty is inviolable. And we will show those who seek to control us where our limits lie. That night, under dim lights, Traore and his advisors worked tirelessly. Every word of the speech was carefully crafted, sharp as a blade. This wasn't a routine diplomatic address, but a manifesto, a challenge. Traore wanted it to touch the heart of every Burkinabe, to rekindle the pride and unity long dormant under the weight of dependency. By morning, news of President Traore's national television address spread like wildfire. The people of Burkina Faso, accustomed to lengthy, bland political statements, felt an unusual curiosity. They sensed a new energy from this young leader, a man of action over words, who dared to confront powers no one had dared touch before. As night fell, millions of eyes across Burkina Faso turned to old TVs and flickering phone screens. From remote villages under baobab trees to Ouagadougou's bustling streets, activity seemed to pause. The nation held its breath. At 8 p.m., Captain IBRAHIM Traoré appeared on every national channel. He wore his familiar olive-green uniform, but this time he stood not in a command room or press conference, but before a simple wooden podium, with Burkina Faso's flag fluttering in the night breeze behind him. His eyes met the camera, fearless, brimming with sincerity and resolve. "My dear brothers and sisters of Burkina Faso," his voice rang out, warm and powerful, carrying the weight of history. "Today, I stand here not only as your interim president, but as a son of this land, one who has witnessed the pain and sacrifices our nation has endured for centuries." He recounted the nation's humiliating history, from brutal colonial rule and plundered resources to nominal independence shackled by unfair agreements. We were thrust into a cycle of dependency, where aid became a tool for control, where democracy was used to legitimize exploitation. They spoke of stability, but tolerated terrorists wreaking death and destruction across our land. Traoré's voice grew sharper, unflinching in its direct criticism. In recent days, we've faced new pressures from external forces, concerns masking blatant interference. They sent their Secretary of State, their ambassador, to demand we abandon our right to self-determination, to force us onto a path they've drawn. They want us to accept conditions that strip our sovereignty, to bow to their interests. He paused, his gaze sweeping the camera, as if looking into the eyes of every Burkinabe and those watching from afar. But I say to you, no, Burkina Faso will never bow. We are no longer pawns on any superpower's chessboard. We will never accept a hollow independence. Our democracy will be built from the blood and will of our people, not some imported model from Washington or Paris. Then, Traore announced what had been brewing: Burkina Faso's ultimatum. To ensure Burkina Faso can truly stand on its own and focus on rebuilding, we need a clean and transparent environment. Therefore, I declare, from this moment, all foreign entities, including non-governmental organizations, NGOs, multinational corporations, and any foreign body operating on Burkina Faso's soil, have 30 days to clarify their purpose, prove financial transparency, and fully align their activities with our laws, national priorities, and the supreme interests of the Burkinabe people. His voice rang out, strong and unwavering. Any organization failing to strictly comply within this time frame will be deemed as acting against Burkina Faso's national interests and will be required to leave the country immediately. We will tolerate no covert interference, no political manipulation, no exploitation under the guise of aid or development. The declaration struck like thunder for those watching from foreign embassies. They couldn't believe their ears. This was unprecedented, a direct challenge to the world order they knew. Traore closed his speech with a stirring, inspiring call. My beloved brothers and sisters, the road ahead will be arduous, full of challenges. They will try every means to weaken and isolate us. But I believe in the iron will of the Burkinabe people. I believe in the power of our unity. We will protect our nation ourselves, build our future ourselves. We will make Burkina Faso a country our children can be proud of. We will rise, or we will die for freedom and dignity. Let us stand together. Let us build a free, resilient, and prosperous Burkina Faso. As Traore's image faded from the screen, the nation erupted in cheers. People poured into the streets embracing, tears streaming with emotion and pride. In Ouagadougou, thousands gathered at Nation Square, waving Burkina Faso's flag, chanting Traore's name, shouting, "Independence or death." Patriotic songs echoed through markets and quiet streets. For the first time in decades, the people of Burkina Faso felt truly in control of their destiny. In Western embassies, the mood was starkly different. Shock and anger prevailed. Diplomats scrambled to contact Washington, Paris, Brussels. "He did it! He dared defy us!" Panicked words were uttered. They knew a new era was dawning in Burkina Faso, one they could no longer easily manipulate. Traore's ultimatum wasn't just a statement, it was a gunshot echoing across Africa, signaling an unstoppable awakening. Immediately, a fierce backlash hit Burkina Faso, as Traore and his advisors had anticipated. A media storm erupted. Major global outlets, from the New York Times to Le Monde, published dramatic headlines. Burkina Faso defies the world. Military leader pushes nation into isolation. Uncertain future for Sahel after Traore's declaration. News channels aired interviews with Western experts and analysts, unanimously condemning Traore's regime as dictatorial, inexperienced, and endangering Africa's democratic progress. They painted a grim picture of an isolated, chaotic, impoverished Burkina Faso. Traore's image was distorted into that of a reckless, short-sighted figure. Alongside the media onslaught, economic blows swiftly followed. Within days, major Western mining corporations announced suspensions or withdrawals from Burkina Faso, citing political instability and an unsafe investment climate. Development aid from the European Union and international financial institutions like the World Bank and IMF was frozen, with statements about reassessing commitments. Burkina Faso's currency plummeted against the US dollar and euro, spiking prices for imported goods and directly pressuring citizens' lives. Some European airlines cut flights to Ouagadougou, heightening the sense of isolation. The pressure wasn't just economic. Diplomatically, Burkina Faso faced coldness and harsh criticism. At the United Nations, some Western nations voiced deep concern over alarming developments in Burkina Faso. Emergency meetings of ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, were held, though some members took a more cautious stance, but the general pressure was for Burkina Faso to return to constitutional order. Yet Traore and his government had anticipated it all. They were prepared for the worst. In closed meetings, the finance minister outlined emergency response plans, focusing on boosting domestic production to reduce import reliance. Programs encouraged farmers to increase cultivation, with the government pledging to buy produce at stable prices. Local small and medium enterprises were supported, and an emergency fund was established to aid those directly impacted by foreign companies' withdrawals. Remarkably, the Burkinabe people's spirit remained extraordinarily resilient. Despite initial economic hardships, pride and faith in their young leader became a powerful driving force. Markets stayed vibrant, people worked diligently. They understood that true independence came at a steep cost, but it was worth paying. Patriotic songs and slogans like "Independence or Death" and "Sovereignty above all" echoed through the streets, turning external pressure into internal motivation. Traore didn't sit idle. He and his diplomatic team swiftly expanded ties with new partners. High-level delegations were sent to Russia, China, Turkey, Cuba, several South American nations, and other African countries, sharing a vision of sovereignty and self-reliance. These dialogues focused on fair, non-politically binding cooperation. New agreements on technology exchange, unconditional military support, and investments in critical infrastructure began to be signed, gradually filling the gap left by the West. During the 30-day ultimatum, Burkina Faso's atmosphere was both tense and hopeful. Some foreign organizations, seeing the government's resolve and public support, adjusted their operations to comply with the new regulations, pledging financial transparency and respect for sovereignty. However, most Western NGOs and companies maintained a hardline stance and chose to leave, leaving a significant void. But Burkina Faso didn't collapse. Instead, it was transforming. Under Traore's resolute leadership, the nation was adapting, seeking internal solutions and new partners. External pressure didn't weaken them. It strengthened their resolve and unity as a nation. The 30 days of the ultimatum had ended. Burkina Faso stood firm. Despite dire predictions and immense pressure, the country did not collapse. Instead, a powerful spirit of self-reliance ignited in the heart of every citizen, turning hardship into motivation. At this moment, another email arrived from Washington. This time, it wasn't a demand or a warning. It was a proposal. Marco Rubio, U.S. Secretary of State, requested one final video call with President Traore. No conditions or demands were mentioned in the letter. It was a clear sign. Washington had to acknowledge a new reality. Traore agreed. He chose his familiar office for this call, a room that now seemed to carry a different atmosphere, quieter yet more commanding. The afternoon sunlight still poured through the window, illuminating the map of Burkina Faso on the wall, a symbol of reaffirmed sovereignty. The screen lit up, and Marco Rubio's face appeared. This time, there was no trace of the arrogant confidence or irritation. Instead, there was an unusual calm, mixed with a hint of reluctance. He no longer tried to hide his surprise at the resilience of a nation he once thought would be easily subdued. "Good afternoon, President Traore," Rubio began, his voice lower, lacking its usual fluency. We have closely followed the situation in Burkina Faso over the past 30 days, and I must admit, your message has been received loud and clear. Traore listened, his gaze unwavering. He let Rubio speak, allowing him to reveal the shift in stance. Despite differences in approach and vision, Rubio continued, we respect your determination to protect the sovereignty and interests of the Burkinabe people. We understand you are acting for what you believe is best for your country. He paused, taking a deep breath, as if swallowing something hard to accept. The United States believes in the importance of stable international relations. While we have concerns about the path Burkina Faso is choosing, we are willing to maintain diplomatic channels and seek specific areas of cooperation based on mutual respect and shared interests when the time is right. This was not an apology, nor a full acceptance, but it was an acknowledgement of IBRAHIM Traoré's strength of will and the ability of a small nation to stand up to a superpower's pressure. It was reluctant respect, but respect nonetheless. Traore gave a faint smile. Secretary Rubio, he replied, his voice calm but weighty. I appreciate your acknowledgement. Burkina Faso has always desired relations based on mutual respect, not imposition. We do not seek confrontation, but we will not back down from those who aim to strip us of our self-determination. He continued, his voice growing more resolute. We will stay on our path, the path of self-reliance and resilience. We will build a strong Burkina Faso from within, with our resources serving our people and our future shaped by our own hands. We will work with any nation in the world that truly respects our sovereignty, without hidden conditions or the cost of dependency. Rubio nodded, his expression pensive. The conversation ended without a grand reconciliation or warm handshakes, but a new understanding had been established. Washington realized it could no longer easily impose its will on Burkina Faso. As the call ended, the screen went dark, and Traore stood. He walked to the window, looking out at Hadougo sinking into the sunset. The sky remained vast, and the red-roofed houses stood serene. In that moment he felt a quiet peace, but was acutely aware of the long road ahead. Burkina Faso's path would not be easy. More challenges and pressures awaited. But now, his country had a solid foundation, faith in itself, unity, and an unshakable will. Traore placed a hand on his chest, where his heart beat strongly. He recalled his oath, his promise to the people. Burkina Faso will never bow, even under the weight of the world. That voice echoed not only in his mind, but in the hearts of millions of Burkinabe. Burkina Faso had not collapsed. It had risen. Under IBRAHIM Traoré's leadership, a small West African nation sent a powerful message to the world. Sovereignty is sacred, and a people's will to self-determination cannot be broken. Traoré's legacy was not just a new government, but a flame of pride and dignity, lighting the way for a radiant future, not only for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa, a continent steadily asserting its place on the world stage. The story of Captain IBRAHIM Traoré and his confrontation with Secretary Marco Rubio offers valuable lessons applicable to modern life in the United States. The story emphasizes the power of standing firm and maintaining autonomy. Just as Traoré resolutely rejected the imposed conditions from Rubio and Ambassador Locke at what he called the price of dependency, we too must trust in our values and path, even when facing pressure from society, friends, or controlling advice. Traoré's 30-day ultimatum demonstrates the importance of setting clear boundaries and defending them. The story also highlights the strength of unity and self-reliance. Facing a media storm and economic blows, Burkina Faso did not collapse. Instead, its people boosted domestic production and sought new partners. This teaches us that, in hardship, leveraging inner strength and seeking support from genuine relationships is more effective than dependency. It reminds us of the power of community and mutual support in society. Finally, the story shows that respect comes only when you are strong enough. Rubio's eventual acknowledgement and respect for Traoré's stance reveals that only when you are resilient and steadfast do others truly recognize your value. Don't expect immediate acceptance. Focus on strengthening yourself and showing determination, and respect will follow, even if reluctantly at first. Thank you for joining us in exploring this inspiring story of courage and the indomitable spirit of a nation. If this tale of resilience and sovereignty has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated with more profound and meaningful content. We look forward to seeing you in our upcoming videos, where we will continue to explore the values and lessons that make greatness.